Welcome to Coming Home, Survive and Thrive in Homeschooling. I have two topics for you today. The first is carrying on from the Language Arts Without a Curriculum from last week. The second is taking the opportunity to go over again preparation for Easter. Today, for the Language Arts ongoing thinking that I've been doing this week, I'm going to hone in some more regarding the Read Aloud books and how we chose them, and what to look for in a good book. When there are so many to choose from, it can be so confusing when you go into a library or somebody else's resources and it's like they're yelling at you. So how do you choose a really good book? Right from the early picture books to early readers and going on into older books that are starting to engage with abstract young minds. So first of all, there are 3 areas to learn to look for when you are choosing what is a good book. In most situations, you can assume that an older published book, that would be pre-1960s, is probably going to be worthy of your attention. Now clearly that's not 100% because there's some pretty daft books that were written before then as well. But that's a help. It's a first clue if you like. But then you've also got all of the books written since then. And yes, you do have to navigate your way through some growing liberal and progressive thoughts that have permeated Western society since then. But there are still some beautiful gems worthy of your time and attention and of your children's. So thinking of some of these older books, for instance, the 3 things to look out for, apart from being guided by its publishing date, would be illustrations, secondly, the words, and thirdly, the ideas used therein. Illustrations first of all, because especially when you're looking at the picture book level from the early years, that's going to be the thing that captures your interest straight away. What are the illustrations doing? Are they well drawn? Is it a piece of artwork in itself? It could be simple sketches in black and white, or it could be detailed with colour. But what are the illustrations doing for you? Are they interesting? Do they draw you in? Are they beautiful enough? Is there something about them that makes you want to keep on looking? It could be a piece of artwork that you'd be happy to have in a frame, or not, but the pictures, illustrations need to make sense. And they're not there, they're not being drawn for the purpose of helping the child to figure out what the words are on the page. I mentioned that, I think it was in the last podcast. The child needs to learn to read via phonics, and then there will be some sight words, and that is her word attack skill for learning to unpack the wording. So what are the illustrations doing? It's quite different to have an illustration that is encompassing the idea of the story that you might be able to point to that encapsulates something of what the story has said in the words and takes it a few levels deeper for the child. But the illustrations are not there to help the child guess the words. So the text and the artwork support each other. And it's not put together, the illustrations, in a patronizing way and talking down to the child, because children are worthy of good art. On to the words, point number 2. When you're looking at the script, the wording, are the words written in a way that for comprehension is adequate to the child's age and a little bit more? Wording that is assuming that a child doesn't really understand very much and deliberately chooses the simple word just to be on the safe side of not wanting to give a child a complicated word, I would be avoiding that type of book. One of the children's authors that is lauded in New Zealand is Linley Dodd, and she wrote the series Harry McCleary. If you look at the photograph that illustrates the Coming Home podcast, you will see one of her books, Harry McCleary from Donaldson's Dairy. She was criticised for often putting a complicated word in her books. But her justification when she was challenged with this was that she believed a child was smart enough to understand the context, and it was a good opportunity to learn a new word. The other aspect to look for when it comes to the wording of a book, especially for younger books, is the rhythm that goes with it. I think it's really clever to not only put together a story with interesting and meaningful words, but to create that extra level of cadence. Well, I just think that's clever because I don't think I could do that. And that kind of rhythm is clear in many of the early picture books for children, and that's part of what is the joy of reading it out to the child, because they're not going to pick that rhythm if they're trying to unpack the word and pronounce it phonetically. If they're trying to work through what are they actually reading, they're not going to pick that extra level of beauty in that story, which is part of the attraction of reading aloud books to your children, no matter what age they are. And if there's a rhythm in there, let it carry you along as the reader. Allow yourself to be pulled into the purpose that that rhythm is there for, because then you will extract the optimum joy out of that book. Now, in the early years, you are going to have to get over your embarrassment, if you like, of reading aloud in front of your children, especially if there happens to be another adult in the room. You're just going to have to make yourself push through that awkwardness and embrace the idea, especially if you're following a Charlotte Mason approach and you already know that good books are your base foundation with a depth and a strength to them that is going to undergird your entire education for the next however many years you're homeschooling. So enter into the challenge that reading out loud brings to you. It will enrich you too. Moving on to the third idea, the ideas that are now encapsulated in your book. And there are ideas in picture books. They're not all innocent. So be wise in the books you are choosing. The justification of, well, it's reading and any reading has got to be good enough because it's getting a child to practice it. No, that is not a good enough reason to allow your child to read a book that she has been given, or to carry on reading what is just silly. Charlotte Mason had a saying called twaddle. Twaddle is senseless writing that really has no purpose. It just engages with pure silliness with no purpose to the silliness. And it is patronizing and it dumbs down your child and it is not worthy of them. I think it's the literary way of saying, well, it doesn't really matter what food a child eats because the point is that she has to eat. You know that that's not true, because you know that bad food is not going to make her healthy. Well, bad books are going to feed her mind in an unhealthy way, and at best they're just going to retard her mental growth, but at worst they're actually going to prevent her from engaging with some of the greatest minds and ideas. And to deliberately hold your child back because you've bought into that modern notion of, well, it doesn't really matter, any book is a book, just let her read. No. So put aside that idea. It is a lie. Now, what are your ideas that your children are being exposed to? Just take a really good look at some of the books and look at them with wisdom and questioning. Is it straightforward silliness with no purpose? Well, that would be okay in some situations, but it's like, we'll take the 80-20 principle, if you like, which generally speaking is my attitude towards food. 80% good, 20% not so much. And I think your body can handle that. because it's designed in such a way that it can deal with that 20% of junk, provided the 80% is good, hearty, nourishing food. Well, apply that to your books and how you're choosing them as well. Now, if you have decided that the book is a little bit junky, that is not a literature book for school. That is for reading outside for educational purposes. So I know I've mentioned, let's say, the Harry Potter series before, and I am happy to take on anybody's challenge to argue that they are not literature. They are jolly good books with a rollicking good story, but they're not literature. I have no issue with my children reading Harry Potter, but they read them outside of their school hours. If you're going to choose something in the fantasy realm, I would give them C.S. Lewis and Tolkien over and above. And if you look at the level of quality of that literature, I don't really think that needs any argument. What are some of the other ideas in there? Well, what about selfishness? Does that come through some of the ideas behind what the author is saying? Because here is something else that you need to absorb, an important truth. No book is neutral. Every author comes to her paper, if you like, or the computer for modern day, through a world view. So you need to take that into account too. Now, coming from it from a Christian perspective, that does not imply that every book that you expose your children to or allow them to have must be written from a Christian worldview. I've seen some pretty daft Christian books also that just lack the quality of the aforementioned illustrations, wordings, and just the ideas put together quite clumsily. What ethical dilemmas might be in the book? Now, I'm going to go back to the Harry Potter example, if you like. It's quite clear very early on that the children broke the rules of Hogwarts and they went against authority. But the way the book writes it is that the end justified the means, and it was okay for the child to do that, and that the child in their very limited experience, and how old were those with the children when they went off to Hogwarts? 11, 12 maybe? There is no way a child of that age, natural wise wizard or not, can have more experience in life that makes them wiser than all of their professors. The books were written in a way that made that seem an okay thing to do, that it all worked out in the end, therefore it justified the children's downright disobedience, actually. And I don't think that that's a very wise idea for your children to absorb. Is that really what you want them to think? When you put it bluntly, the children lied in order to back up what they were doing. Is that an idea, an example that you really want your child to embody? So that's what I mean about what aspects of selfishness were in there, what ethical dilemmas are in there. So if you have morals and values within your family life, you need to be cognizant to a detailed degree, especially when your children are younger, what is the content of these books. Now, the ideas in a book shouldn't be preachy. They shouldn't be written in a way where it's quite clear that they're trying to moralize with your child. The idea should naturally be within the writing and incidental, not a story that has been written around a topic because the goal of the author was to get a moral across. Well, I guess Aesop's fables are a bit like that, but it's absolutely clear with Aesop's fables that that's the purpose of the book. So I think to find a good book when you're not sure about your choices before you, you have got, after looking at the publishing date, you've got these three things which ideally all need to fit in. An example of, I'm reading Anne of Green Gables again myself at the moment, and that book does not set out to preach at you, but you are in no doubt of the Christian virtues embodied in its form as you're reading them. But it's not the goal of the book. And I think that that is a very good example. All right, now one of the purposes of especially the read aloud book that we used to have, where at the end of the morning, 11:30 was our time, we would all come together and we would listen to our read aloud. And it sets up a routine which punctuates every day, bringing to it a sense of normality and all is well. Because at that time, that's just what happened. We just had our Read Aloud book. So it brought the family together. Everyone listened. The baby would probably be asleep, and the toddler probably had his special box because he was just too young to even absorb very much by osmosis. Say we had read Anne of Green Gables at 7 is very different to hearing it again at age 12 or 13, and very much different again to hearing it as an adult. And a well-written children's book is just as good for an adult as it is for a child. Earlier I mentioned you as the reader having to get over some of your own self-consciousness. A read aloud opportunity is so helpful to you as an adult because not only does your own reading intake go up, you learn more too. I ended up reading books I had never read, and I was constantly learning new expressions that stretched my boundaries in a way that I could express myself more articulately because I had an added arsenal, I suppose you could call it, of precise words and phrases. And embracing really good quality reading is one of the fantastic side effects of this for you as the adult, as well as what the child is naturally absorbing through it all too. Now, I'm going to give you a few examples of the read aloud books that we had. It is by no means a comprehensive list, and for very good book lists, I've already given some resource books in my podcast last week, but here are a few I've got in mind. I've already mentioned Anne of Green Gables to you. That is good for somebody, probably a little girl to be fair, although the boys did enjoy listening as well. From about 7 or 8, there will be some more complex aspects to it that will be above her. Don't worry about it. If she asks questions, answer them, but otherwise read on. There were the Narnia books, Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, The Wind in the Willows by Kenneth Grahame. That is also for younger readers, but honestly, that is one of my favourite books. As I mentioned before, a good child's book is also a good adult's book. I love The Wind in the Willows. There is the whole series of The Little House. George MacDonald, a Scottish author, may not be known to you. One of my favourites from him is Wee Sir Gibbie of the Highlands. We really enjoyed that. And we knew that that was a good book. Not only did it pass the early publication date, but I knew in advance that C.S. Lewis viewed George MacDonald as a mentor. That's good enough for me. Wee Sir Gibbie of the Highlands is obviously a story based in Scotland. There are no illustrations in it because it is written for older readers. The writing and the ideas in it exemplify everything that is wonderful in a good child's book without sparing the child from complex ideas and words. G.K. Chesterton, also for older children. We really enjoyed the Father Brown series. Also, his book called Club of Queer Trades is definitely worth chasing up. And C.S. Lewis, my only non-fiction pick here, Mere Christianity. Obviously no illustrations. It is for older teens, I would think. Mature teens, definitely for adults also, and worth revisiting over and over and over. Now, I have got here a pile of books that I have chosen from my bookshelf to go over with you to illustrate some of the books that we chose, why some of them were easily chosen, and picks from more modern books and why we ended up choosing. The first book from, I would say, preschool and early school years are the books by Janet and Alan Alberg. The one I've got here is Each Peach Pear Plum. It is a cardboard book, or a thick card book. Right from the beginning, the illustrations just, yes, answer all of those questions. The pictures draw you in. They are so well done, and there is the content even in the illustrations excellent in themselves. The way each page that you go over draws you into whatever the next page is. So for example, Tom Thumb in the cupboard, I spy Mother Hubbard. Well, there is Tom Thumb in the cupboard. But over there in the corner, you've got the rather rotund behind of Mother Hubbard featuring in the corner, which is giving the hint that it's going to be on the next page. Sure enough, you turn the page, there is Mother Hubbard. Mother Hubbard down the cellar, I spy Cinderella. And this page introduces the next part of the story. So it's got this pulling effect on and on into the next page. And you can see Cinderella's arm over behind the stored equipment with a feather duster. And it goes like that all through the book. Obviously, they are playing on old fairy tales as well. So you've got classic stories being enveloped into another classic book for children. So again, illustrations, the wording and the ideas in there passes the test. Another young child's book, I've got My Naughty Little Sister. She features regularly in my recommendations to you. The illustrations, again, so well done. The illustrations are done by Shirley Hughes. Dorothy Edwards writes the Naughty Little Sister series. The illustrations, excellent. The ideas and the written word, just again, they just tick all the boxes. Everything you could ever want in there. The ideas in there, they'll make you laugh. They will teach you some of history. They will exemplify and encourage what a family unit is. It is just all round, absolutely top-notch, beautiful book. Other young ones, Dr. Seuss, we have got a pile of them here. The one I've got out here is One Fish, Two Fish, Red Fish, Blue Fish. Now the illustrations, Dr. Seuss, you will be familiar with them. They're very simple. They're silly, but silliness with a fabulous purpose. So the illustrations definitely draw you in. They're very well done, simple though they are. Their expressions are excellent, and he just encapsulates fantasy really in very junior fiction so very, very well. And the younger books here, they have a wonderful teaching purpose to them as well, but the stories in them are so good. In the Dr. Seuss series, it is not written by Dr. Seuss, it is written by Theo Lessig, I assume his name is. I wish that I had duck feet. It is silly, it is fabulously silly, because nobody's going to have duck feet, but the way that it captures the imagination of a child and all of the crazy things that they may have wished that they could be, and each good reason as to why they would not have been a good idea, and the way at the end it pulls it back in to just the fabulousness of them. You can wish to be so many things, but in the end, you're you, and nobody else does you quite like you. So really good job with that book there. Now, the Berenstain Bears. A few of these are really good. Unfortunately, some of them fall under twaddle, especially some of their latter ones. Part of the humour of the Berenstain Bears one series is that it always has the father looking a fool and being made fun of, and the laughing joke, and of course usually the young bear as being somewhat wiser than the father and often coming to his rescue, and sometimes rather snide I told you so looks on Mother Bear's face in the background. For all that, they're very popular, they are funny, they're well written, but there's just something about them that I would advise approach with caution. As the decades go by, anything that undermines the family unit, especially I think the role of the father, needs to be viewed with caution. All right, what else have we got here? I've already said Harry McCleary to you and why we like this so much. Now, this is a New Zealand book. You'll be able to find it if you go looking for it. It will show you the quintessential New Zealand scenes in suburbia. They've got the traditional white picket fences. They display what you would normally see in gardens, the way our letterboxes and each individual house can be so very different. And it starts off with each dog being introduced and the description of the dogs, which are told in rhyme, describe exactly what the dog is. And forevermore, when you see a particular dog, Hercules Morse as big as a horse, and Harry McCleary from Donaldson's Dairy, and all through the book, you've got different types of dogs being described in certain ways. And even though your children are now in their 20s and 30s, they still might see a Dalmatian, and they will refer to it as bottomly pots covered in spots. Each page in the illustrations, they are simple but so well done. They capture the idea and the essence of each dog and each property that the dog comes off, and they want you to turn the pages. Can you hear the rhythm that goes with this? Don't just simply read the words. Notice where the lines are placed, the comma is placed, and enjoy the rhythm, and it really captures it. Grandpa's Cardigan, a very well-known New Zealand book here by Joy Watson. The humour in it is wonderfully done, and children love that book. So do the adults that read them. Another book that I found that really appealed to the boys, possibly more than the girls, although a girl who would be interested in mechanical things would like it. Mechanical Harry by Bob Kerr. Again, the story just captures all of the imaginative, interesting ways that the young boy would go about just doing stuff. The illustrations, simple, adequate, reasonably done. The ideas in the story, again, absolute, tick, tick, and tick. And that was a modern book in amongst some of my older books. Now here's one that I found, I don't know where I found it, a library sale, I think. The illustrations are so old, they come from the days of just black, white, a little bit of red and a tiny bit of blue. 1962. It's called Who's a Pest by Crosby Bonsall. Now the reason why I like it is that it's a complete play on words all the way through. We have Homer, who is the younger brother of 4 sisters who are quads, all named Lolly, Molly, Polly and Dolly. So already you have got the rhythm of words that sound similar all the way through. Just one caution about what I call beautiful books with fantastic illustrations through them. I would advise you reading the story to the child. Show them the picture after you have read them that page. So it gives them the opportunity to form in their minds and in their imaginations the illustrations that they have painted the illustration themselves in their mind without being overly influenced by the beautiful book. That is the only downfall I can think of the regular use of beautiful books, is because it denies the child the chance for the complete experience of forming those illustrations in their heads. I think I've covered for you why I believe they are important. The Reading Aloud was a sacred time for us over all of the years, right into the teens, and even as our youngest was at home and she was still the last one there in her 16 or 17, I was still reading aloud to her. We did this constructively as part of our strategic homeschooling. I actually miss it. I really miss reading aloud, so it is a delight to me to read aloud to our granddaughter when we see her. I want to encourage you again to re-listen to the podcast that I recorded last year on Easter. Easter weekend is coming up again. The traditions and rituals in it are just as important year on year as ever. And in that podcast, I do have some good ideas of how to approach it and what traditions and rituals you can implement yourself in your family. That's it for me this week. I hope you have enjoyed another dip into language arts that you can do without having to buy a curriculum. I hope that has encouraged and equipped you. I wish you every blessing over this wonderful Easter time of the year, and I will catch up with you again next week. Bye for now.